I started ballet when I was 10 years old. It came after a long time of doing many other art forms and sports. I was always into painting and drawing, but also into soccer and running and just being outside. So the whole ballet journey actually came from a jazz class that I was doing with one of my best friends. It became a requirement to also do ballet. So my dad took me to Boulder Ballet, which was a tiny school in Colorado. And I just remember my first class standing at the bar and learning the positions and thinking, oh my God, I really like this and I think I'm good at this. And it was a feeling of maybe the first time in my life where I've just felt like completely at home. And I don't know, there wasn't anything particularly special that happened, but I just knew in that moment this was it. So that kind of started the journey, which was, I mean, it's been a whirlwind, but it was very exciting. I feel like from 10 years old, I knew this was it. And it just, slowly escalated. And it was, the next exciting thing was getting point shoes and going on stage and actually performing and wearing makeup and becoming a character in something. And so the first few years of my ballet life just felt like, I don't know, the most fun I ever had. I started going to summer schools and meeting new people and other dancers, and it was really, really fun. And then around 14 years old, I started to become a bit more serious, to understand what the dance world actually was and, what you needed to do to get into a professional school and then company. So I started training to do a few competitions to kind of get, some exposure. Coming from Colorado, there's not a lot of opportunities. It's very, it's quite an isolated state. There's a Colorado Ballet, which is great, but I had dreams of dancing in Europe always. Margot Fonteyn was the first ballerina that I really knew about, and the Royal Ballet seemed like, I don't know, just the absolute best place you could be. So there was kind of that goal in the back of my mind. So I felt like staying in Colorado wasn't going to be an option for me. So I did Youth America Grand Prix, YGP, and that was probably the first time that I was a little bit scared about performing and ballet in general. Suddenly my world, which I thought I had a very good grasp on, exploded, and there was, hundreds of dancers that could do all these crazy technical things, and I felt like a small fish in a very, very big pond. And it was just a moment of realizing, oh my God, if I want to do this, I'm gonna have to work incredibly hard and be incredibly focused. So my time there was really mixed. There was definitely some good, but also a few wake-up calls. Anyway, from there, I was really lucky to get a scholarship to go to the Kirov Academy in Washington, D.C., which I went for the year-long program, which was, again, hard because I was away from home for the first time, but gave me such a great technical background in the Russian training and opened my eyes even further to what the ballet world was. And it was from there that one of my very good friends suggested that we do the Royal Ballet Summer School. So we went for 2 weeks in July, and actually at the time I had decided, I had auditioned, I sent a video to the Bolshoi Ballet School in Russia, and they had accepted me. So I was on cloud nine at this point. I thought I was going to go live in Russia and train at one of the best schools ever. And I was doing this little stint at the Royal Ballet and was very excited to just spend 2 weeks in London and, kind of have fun and try a different style that was very different to Russian. And I kind of knew that anyway, at the end of the summer, I was going to move to Russia. So when I finally got to the Royal Ballet, the teachers it was such a different environment. It was not that when you're in a Russian school, it's quite strict, it's very harsh, it's, I don't know, you're incredibly focused, and it's not always a positive atmosphere, but they get the best out of you no matter what. So they work you and they work you and they work you and they tell you that you're not good enough. But then when it comes to the show, you're the best you've ever been. So, there's that kind of weird dynamic. Whereas when I came to England, the teachers were all so positive, and it was just like a completely different scenario to be in. So it was also another eye-opening experience, and I had a lot of fun because I felt very relaxed. I didn't have any expectations coming out of the summer school except for having fun. And one of the teachers there asked me if I was going to audition for the school, and I was like, no, I'm going to Russia. I'm not going to be here. And she said, no, I really think that you should do this audition. It will be, you never know what could come from it. So I thought, okay, yeah, sure, why not? I'll do it. And I remember going into the audition, it was the calmest I've ever been. I put my number on and I just, was like, okay, here we go. Just do class and see how we go. And, finished it, called my parents and was like, yeah, it was fine. Did a class, whatever. And then the next day they told me, so we would love to offer you a position at the school. And I was like, thank you. That's very kind. It never hit me. It was just like something that happened and I was like, oh, that's so great. But, still thinking I was going to Russia. So it wasn't like it hadn't sunk in. And when I told my parents, I think fortunately they realized what an amazing opportunity it would be for me, because moving to Russia was, it was implying that, first of all, I wasn't going to speak the language. We weren't really sure how the school was working. We'd never been there. There was a lot of unknowns there. And moving to England seemed a lot easier and a lot more feasible at the time. It's an English-speaking country. It's very close to Italy, where my family is from. It just seemed a little bit more right for me. So after a long discussion, I decided that the Royal Ballet School was going to be the place for me. So this was my journey to getting to the Royal Ballet School. So lots of twists and turns and unexpected circumstances. But how was it for you?
My dance journey began age 10 in my primary school in Sydney, Australia. And my mum, there was an all-boys dance troupe that was being created to kind of encourage dance in what is quite a sporty environment. And my mum said, you should go and audition, why not? It would be a really good thing to do. And at the time I was a swimmer. I'd always been a swimmer. I was training to become a professional swimmer. And I thought, okay, this is interesting, but I'll give it a go. And so I talked to my friends about it and we were like, yeah, let's go as a group, feel safe in numbers. And then one of my friends said, you know what? I don't think we should go. And I said, oh, okay. And I was swayed by his opinion, and I skipped the audition. I'd go home, my mum asked me, so how was the audition? Very excited to hear how it went. And I said, I didn't go. And she said, you're going back in tomorrow. You are apologizing to the dance teacher and you're going to ask her for a re-audition. And I was so terrified. I was like, I'm so sorry, Mum, I didn't mean it. So I go in the next day and I tell her, she said, I made an excuse up. I missed it. Okay, fine. Here you go. Show me. She demonstrated some movement, and I just copied her. And she said, "Oh, wow, you have some potential. I can see. You have some fluidity and gracefulness in your movement." And I think that came from swimming. Actually, to be honest, it has a certain kind of physicality. Anyway, joined this troupe. Ended up really enjoying dance. It was contemporary dance, and my mum said, "Okay, I think you need some proper training." So we had a family friend who introduced us to someone who owned a big dance school in Sydney. It's called Brent Street, and I ended up starting there as an extracurricular activity, and I did jazz, tap, contemporary, hip hop, and then of course ballet. And that's where I met Christine Keith, who is, she was a first soloist with the Royal Ballet, and she had a wonderful career, and she ended up taking me under her wing. And I vividly remember my first ballet class with her, and I'd arrived late, I didn't have any clothing, I didn't know what ballet was, and she just sort of chucked me to the side, just follow along kind of thing. So there I go and hold onto the bar, I have no idea what's going on, class, beautiful piano starts playing, and I just followed, and I see her kind of walking past me and giving me the kind of eyebrow raise, and I had the turnout, and she was, asking me to point my feet and lift my legs, and I was, quite skinny, and I didn't. The facility was there, and she said, "You've got something. You've got to come back and let's work on this. You could make something out of this." So I thought, okay, I've got potential. This might be something to do. And it snowballed from there, really. So I ended up kind of focusing on the ballet, and all the other dance genres really helped kind of build me as an all-rounded dancer. And I think probably the next stage that I can tell you about is then I moved I continued on through high school, and I continued ballet training in the RAD format. And I joined another ballet school in Sydney called Alegria, where Stephen McRae, various other dancers are from now. And they like to specialize in training boys. That's what they pride themselves on. So I was training there after school, and then Hilary Kaplan, who's the director, and Archie Mackenzie asked me, would you consider coming full-time vocational training? It's quite a full-on course. You'd have to leave school and do education in the evenings, distance education. And it was a big sort of debate in my family, and we decided, I've got to take this seriously or leave it and just start school. So I took a year off school in year 10, and a year of intensive training, and really enjoyed it. I thought this is the career I want. So at the end of my year of training with them, the way they structure it is you film a private audition DVD of yourself doing class and a variation and a contemporary variation as well, and send it off to European, American schools and try and maybe even a summer school, see what you get out of it. And at that stage, Galen Stock had a very good relationship with my ballet school, and she asked for me to come over for 2 weeks to take class and see how I got on. Pretty much gave me almost an open audition, which was great. It meant I didn't have to come into the big call. So I came over in August, which was when the actual school year had started, but because in Australia our year works differently to the calendar year in the UK. So came over, I was integrated in with the first years, did 2 weeks with Milos Pakri and the boys, loved it, and decided to accept the offer. So I joined in the second term, so I came over in January. And before that, I competed in the Gene competition in Wellington, New Zealand. And I got to the finals, and I was about to do the final sort of showcase, and I injured my knee, so I didn't even get to finish the competition, which was really kind of frustrating. I'd sort of flown over and done a week of classes and workshops and a couple of rounds, and then I didn't even get to finish it. So that was a bit of a bummer. And then I was also going to go to the Prix de Lausanne in January, and Galen Stock said, why bother? We've already offered you a position. You're sort of sending us mixed messages. So I said, right, let's go to London.
Moving to London for me from Washington, D.C. was actually, it was huge. So where I was staying in Washington, D.C. was a boarding house. It wasn't set in a particularly nice neighborhood, so we were very much kept inside during the week, and then we were allowed to go out into the city in groups at the weekend. But everything happened in that same place. Yeah. So it was, it was cozy. We were all together, but we didn't really have much freedom. So moving to London, suddenly, you get here and the city is exploding with people, with culture, with art, with just about everything you can imagine. And having lived in such a recluse place for an entire year, suddenly coming here was like this explosion of life. So it was very exciting. And also, coming from America, London has this amazing rep, right? You want to meet the Queen, you want to go and see the guards change, I don't know, you want to see the red telephone box, a huge Harry Potter fan, you want to go to platform 9 3/4. Like, there's so much that you just want to do, especially as a young kid. So it was like almost coming to a magical place. I had this feeling of, oh my God, I'm really here. So for me, it was incredibly exciting. And also, I think I was lucky because I got to stay at the Wolf House, which was at the time where all the first year students stayed. And, you know, we each had our room and our roommate, and we had kitchens, so we got to cook for ourselves. And for me, that was like, this is it. I'm a grown up now. I'm living in London. I have my own little room, and I'm going to travel into school. So I think it was a much more positive experience for me because I had this is going to be magical. And I had not come from, you know, a sunny, beachy place. I had really come from a concrete building with a little park around it. So it was probably a completely different experience for you.
Exactly. So moving in January, I came from our summer holidays. I'd been on the beach and I was kind of saying goodbye to friends. I was a little bit sad and I was nervous, a bit apprehensive. It's a 24-hour flight to London. It's a big emotional taxing journey, and I arrived and got off the plane, and the pilot says, "Welcome to London Heathrow Airport. It is currently -1 degrees." And my mum says, "Did you bring your winter coat?" And I'd forgotten my only winter coat. So I left the airport in a t-shirt and I was frozen. I'd never experienced cold like London, you know. So
Bad start.
Bad start, already a little bit on the wrong foot. And not that influenced my beginning of my stay in the UK, but I definitely missed my family and my home, and it was cold and snowy. So
But it's also hard because it is just so opposite seasonally.
exactly.
So,
It's a complete swap for
yeah.
you know, UK to Sydney and Australia. So I did find it a little bit hard initially. But, you know, you meet friends, you have that independence suddenly where you kind of realize, oh, this is where I'm going to grow up and become an adult and focus on ballet. And so
there was an element of excitement.
of course, yeah. It was sort of, it was all mixed up, you know, muddled emotions. I was nervous but excited, and you know, meeting new people. So yeah.
I think probably London, when your parents leave, I don't know, I felt that way. It suddenly was, okay, now it's the time. I have to, you know, harness all my emotions and all my feelings and really get it together, focus, try to enjoy a little bit.
Of course. Yeah.
But this is kind of
It's
it.
real.
This is the big one.
Yeah, it's real. And yeah, they get on that flight and they're going, you're there by yourself.
Yeah,
But suddenly
it's a really big feeling.
It's a shock, but
yeah. But school, so because you started halfway through the term, but for me it was starting at the very beginning. So it was probably pretty different because I remember coming in and nobody knew each other. It was, you know, just we were sitting in the studio kind of all at our bar spot looking around thinking, oh my God, who are these people?
It's like first day of school and
Yeah,
you're like a
fully.
tiny tot as well. So,
Yeah. And it's just, for me, it was very exciting. And the atmosphere was really different to what I had experienced before. It kind of felt like even more professional out of a training, you know, like before, yes, it was, you know, a full-time ballet school, but this was really it. This was the Royal Ballet School.
You wear the uniform, you
Yeah,
have the French
the
roll, there's
uniform.
that beautiful building, the Bridge of Aspiration. You feel like you're living the dream.
The Bridge of Aspiration. My dad, I still do this every year. But when my dad dropped me off, it was before the very first day of school, and they were then leaving to go to Heathrow. And he took me, and we were standing under the bridge, and he was holding my hand. He said, "Look up and make a wish. Don't tell anyone, and then just go in." So now and actually that first wish came true because when I looked up, I said, "Please, please, please let me get into the Royal Ballet. Please, whatever happens." But anyway, to this day, no matter what, first day back in London after being home, going into a new season, I look up at that bridge and I'm like, make a wish for whatever it is that year that I want to achieve. And it was, I don't know, that's such a symbolic thing for me. And maybe it's cheesy and cliche, but it held so much significance. Yeah, and it worked. It worked. There's some magic there.
Yeah.
But the Royal Ballet School, so my teachers were Katya Zvelibolova, which you never met. She unfortunately left. But Melis Pakri was the first year boys teacher.
Yeah.
And what a legend.
Oh my gosh, iconic, I think.
Yeah.
You know, for the period he worked at the Royal Ballet School and each year that he took through, I think everyone has a very strong memory and kind of idea of the technique and the ideology behind ballet that he gave us. It was probably the most formative training I've had in giving a strong foundation of how a man should dance. 16-year-old boys coming over, there's this sort of like testosterone, puberty's it's all happening and kind of showing off and who's the most impressive, and kind of everyone's sussing it, the competition out, and he just he takes you right back down to I don't know, zero and builds you up again, and sort of really structured how we dance, I think. And I think boys need that at some stage, sort of kind of beating down a little bit so that they get a bit cocky and it's good. And I think he also helped with my first year, which I found, I struggled with homesickness. He gave me that sort of goal, to really work hard when we were going to school. It really helped me focus and take my mind off, am I missing my family? Am I missing the weather? It was just such an intense year. And it really worked, I think. It sort of put me in good stead to continue on through the Royal Ballet School and kind of find myself as a dancer. But the teachers at the Royal Ballet School, so you had Katya
Zvelobelova. She was also Russian trained Vaganova, but kind of more English influenced, obviously, having
a hybrid.
Been teaching at the school for so long. And her and Pakri had an amazing relationship. So I just remember, I just wanted to keep doing class all the time. I was so in love with everything we did. And so I was incredibly just focused on, no matter what it was, solos, pas de deux. I loved pas de deux. That was probably the most fun we've had.
Mr. Pakri also was an exceptional partner. He would always demonstrate as well with a student, and would just be so perfect, calm, cool, collected, partnering one
boss.
hand. He was awesome. It was very inspiring.
Yeah.
So, and I think probably most students go to the Royal Ballet School, and for me anyway, the first year you notice the most improvement, I thought anyway, because coming from where you've originally trained, suddenly that big step into becoming
it's a big springboard. I guess another amazing thing besides the training that we got was the proximity to the Royal Opera House, and the fact that just to go get your lunch at the canteen, you were forced to walk past the studios. So I think we had an hour lunch break, and probably 45 minutes was spent, you go up, you cross the bridge, and there were these windows looking into the de Valois studio first. And they were pretty much open, like a crack like this you could see through. And I would always sit there and watch, and you're generally doing class or a rehearsal. And I just couldn't believe that, these were real dancers. This was what we were working for. And I would just sit there looking like, oh my God, this is it. This is, we're almost there. Yeah. And then if you continue along that corridor, you get to the Ashton studio where there was always, Sarah Lamb or Stephen or Edward Watson performing something, rehearsing. And it was just, it made everything so real. It was like, not only were you training, to better yourself, but there was an end goal.
And I also wanted to mention that it was such a privilege that we had access to every general performance that the Royal Ballet performed. So it was, I don't know, I feel like it was always on a Friday, which always, Friday's a good day, right? And then suddenly you do the morning class and everyone, get your normal clothes on, everyone gets dressed up and you rush across over the bridge and you enter the opera house, and suddenly you just get to watch a practically a full performance. And, it's even maybe slightly more comfortable because it has that element of being casual, and that if something goes wrong, people on stage kind of just, whatever, they just
make it
take
happen.
a moment. They make it happen. The orchestra is a moment, but we carry on, and you realize this is the real work that happens, and how a rehearsal happens to create the opening night, and we're a part of that. We're up there in the amphitheater watching, so it's quite inspirational. And
I think actually the first real performance I saw, because we saw so many generals, and then the first performance, the tickets were given by a sponsor, and it was in the first tier, the Donald Gordon tier, I think it's called.
Seats,
So literally the first row, and I went with 4 friends, and it was Marianelle and Tiago dancing Romeo and Juliet. And I'd never seen the Royal Ballet production before, so it was, you know, Romeo and Juliet. Who doesn't love that? And our teacher, Katya, she had taught Marianella, and she knew how excited we were. So she wrote her a note and said, when the performance finishes, make sure you go to stage door and ask to go to Marianella's dressing room to deliver this note. The excitement. So we were sitting there in these amazing seats. I think that was one of the best performances I ever watched. It was just, you know, we were all crying and we were just so involved with it and so inspired, and the dancing was beautiful and the music was beautiful, and, you know, suddenly you realize you're kind of part of this. And then we got to go backstage and knock on Marianella's door. And I just can't even imagine what she was thinking, having done that super emotional performance and then have 4 little schoolgirls there like, we have a note for you. It was such a great performance. But for us, it was absolutely everything. That was another real moment where I thought, wow, this, like, the Royal Ballet is something extra special.
Yeah, and she, you know, what a gift to be able to lead the way for other dancers and inspire you so much.
Yeah.
I'm sure she saw your faces and just like radiating.
We have
excitement.
a photo.
Oh, yeah.
You can literally see the excitement is like a halo around us all.
Oh dear.
So definitely having that pretty much every day there was a big push to keep working in classes. I found it was hard for me because I was still doing my online school as well as dancing. So I was, you know, every morning there at 8 a.m. We finished school around 5, and then I was going home and doing math or science or something. So for me, it was a really full-time thing. I didn't actually have so much time to have fun. It was, you know,
all-encompassing.
Now when I talk to people, they tell me I was incredibly focused and, you know, very, not that I wasn't friendly, but I just, you know, I had to prioritize certain things. And also for me, there was another huge change because I did the first year, and probably 3/4 of the through after Easter, Gayleen pulled me and this other girl, Hannah Beach, into her office, and yeah, we thought, this is it. We've done something. We're getting expelled. It was a great stint here, but I guess we're going home. And it turned out that she thought we were doing very well, that we were very mature dancers, and she asked, well, rather told us that we would be joining the 3rd year instead of going into 2nd year as a natural progression. So for me, suddenly hearing that news was even, you know, I was already on a high, and then we were reaching the end of the school year, getting ready for the show, and it was like, I don't know, I was on cloud 9.
Of course, yeah.
And so for me, the whole year, the beginning was so exciting, you know, seeing the Royal Ballet, starting all these classes, moving to London, it was already so much. And then it was like even more hearing we're actually going to be joining 3rd year, with the prospect that at the end of, you know, in 2 months' time, we would actually be dancing on the Opera House stage for the first time. So that was just like the most exciting thing ever. So kind of from there, it's all a blur until the performances, which were really, really fun. But actually, I kind of forgot about this. Just before the shows, we were doing Yondering, and the first years were also doing, I can't remember, we had some rep that was just first year students. And just before the Limbury shows, I actually broke my rib. But I remember it happening. It was kind of like a progressive thing, and then I did a jeté in class and I felt it pop. And it was literally the day of the first show. My parents had flown over, you know, it was a thing, and I was in so much pain, but I thought, there's no way. I am not doing these shows. I absolutely have to. So I remember I fell asleep in the changing room, like on the changing room floor, because I was just in so much pain. Okay. Anyway, pushed through like a hardcore ballerina and ended up doing all the shows. And even though I remember it was incredibly painful, I was, you know, enthralled by what was happening. The adrenaline way overpowered a broken rib. And it was amazing. Those, I don't know, I'd never been on a stage that big, and it already felt like home. It felt like we belonged there. I don't know if it was...
Well, it's the great thing about the year at the Royal Ballet School is that you do all this training and there's no actual performances really that happen throughout the year as a student per se, until you get to that final point where there's the Limbury shows and that one big great finale on the Royal Opera House stage. And so I think as students, everyone's excited to actually get out and perform and use the technique and skills that they've acquired throughout the year. So then I think what's great about also being at the Royal Ballet School is usually from second year onwards, the Royal Ballet Company is kind of scouting out who they think could, maybe join at some stage. And they often use students as extras, walk-on roles. And for the girls, quite often, with the big quarter ballet numbers, they often have to take in 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5, depending on injuries and maternity leave. And I think that's where you almost gain the most experience as a dancer of the Royal Ballet School, because there's the transition between student and professional, and how to sort of gauge professional dancers and the rapport and how to rehearse correctly, and
that only came for me in third year though.
Well, you skipped second year.
Yeah.
My first experience working with the Royal Ballet Company was as a student in second year, and they were performing Kenneth Macmillan's Manon, which, I mean, what a performance to be a part of, production, sorry. And I was just doing multiple walk-on roles throughout each act, but the best part of doing that is being on stage, gaining the confidence to be around these incredible performers and having that live, that sort of rush you get from the orchestra and feeling the auditorium space. It was sort of awe-inspiring, and getting to sit in the wings and watch all those iconic pas de deux. It really, I think it just sort of boosts you that much more to work harder at school and hopefully progress into the company. But what was your first experience with
My very first thing was pretty much like 3 days after we started school. So it was, into third year with a whole new class for me. Didn't know really any of the dancers particularly well. And we got called over to the company because they were doing Swan Lake. And I think the company that year had gone on a really long tour, and they had quite a few injured girls. Okay. It was one of those years that I would say is really lucky when you're a student, because if there's a lot of injuries in the company, they're gonna require a lot of students. So that was kind of it was a huge jump, because we were told, this list of girls, please go to the de Valois studio for Swan Lake rehearsal. And it was like, oh my God, what? So we got there, and the company had actually already set all of the second act and the fourth act, and we were told by the ballet mistress, okay, you're going to watch her, blah, 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 but just kind of have a general idea. And already being in the studio, seeing, you're kind of part of the rehearsal, it was like, I couldn't learn anything. I remember that first day, I was just watching, like, wow, this is real. It was fun, but scary as well. But anyway, slowly you realize that all the dancers are humans, they're learning the choreography, they're willing to help you and, kind of slot you in, because at the end of the day, the students are really important, even if it takes them a bit longer to learn something, it's essential. Yeah. So, I actually never went in. A few, it kind of started happening that someone was off, so someone went in and so on. Yeah. And then one studio call, the ballet mistress said, just so you know, you will do one show. So we're going to put you in now. Do the best you can. I'd never been in. And it was that very famous entrance. Da, 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 da. So it just happened. And it was like, it instantly was covered in sweat. I was so unsure of what was going on. Suddenly you realize the patterns are so intricate, and all the girls are shouting at you to go the right way. So it was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. But it was very exciting. So that happened. And then I actually went in, the first time I ever went on stage with the company was for Act 4 of Swan Lake, which is a lot calmer. But I had to lead my line on. We were the first swans on stage in Act 4. And standing there in the wings, knowing, you know, I could hear the music, I had to count the harp, knowing that I was about to run on with the company was just, I don't know, I couldn't describe it to you. It wasn't even just nerves, it was just, it was happening.
Adrenaline.
And you know it was serious. So I started getting integrated into Act 4, and slowly it kind of became normal and really nice. And, you know, it was always nerve-wracking because you want it to be perfect, but that was very comfortable after a while. And then it happened, just went across to check the board and saw that I was doing Act 2. And I'd only done that one rehearsal that was like, I would say a disaster. And so I saw my name there, Buvoli. Okay, it has to happen. So I think I probably got in my costume an hour before the show started and was, you know, going through it thinking, okay. And I remember standing backstage, hearing the music, and the corps de ballet girls around me, I distinctly remember they were talking about their mortgage. Someone had just bought a house, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, I have to do this, I'm gonna buy that. And I was like, but we're going on stage. Like, I was trying to go through all the counts, and I could just see they were so calm.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was about to explode because I didn't know what was going on.
Well, it's a true sign of a professional who is seasoned and understands how to control nerves, and a student who is in that sort of
but
blind
also,
panic.
As a girl, you know, in the corps de ballet, boys don't have this as much, but if one person goes wrong, you can really, especially in something like Swan Lake, you really don't want to let the team down. But it went pretty well, actually. I didn't mess anything up massively. But again, that was probably the first time that it felt like, whoa, this is the company. But yeah, like I said, that year there was so many injured girls. So, you know, progressively as the year went on, I was used in more and more things. So it started to become, again, more natural, and it felt like we started to know the dancers a bit better, and you kind of able to have some kind of relationship with them. So it started feeling nicer to be there. And it was a lot to balance with schoolwork because you have the long day, and then, you know, your adrenaline is through the roof when you're on stage as a student at night, and then you wake up and you've got to do school all over again. So I don't know, for me that was quite hard.
I have to say though, it was quite nice sometimes coming out of school classes, you know, in third year to go into the company and be in company rehearsals. You just felt a bit like, yeah, well.
Even if you sat at the side the whole time.
Exactly, you were just standing there covering like that, but the other students didn't know what you were doing.
That's true, I forgot about
the true
that.
profesh there, like
the smugness of going over and missing, I don't know, contemporary class.
Exactly,
was good.
you know, or something. It sort of changed the day, you know, the structure of it anyway. It was exciting,
Well, I guess the next thing for me would be auditions, because I know so you were in second year, so you weren't really experiencing this, but so about the time that you guys were really getting into schoolwork and not chilling, but, you know, you have your routine. In third year, as you later experienced, you kind of have this, you know, you start working with the company, everything's really exciting, but then by January, you need to kind of start auditioning. So you have your audition photos, you learn how to write a resume, and it starts to become real. I remember talking to my parents before an audition saying, well, I guess this is it. You know, this is where we find out if the last 10 years were worth it or not, because if I don't get a job, what's going to happen?
Yeah, have to show for it.
Yeah. My first auditions, I think I set up quite a few in a weekend. So it was just 2 in the weekend. So it was Dutch National and Munich. So that was the first. Dutch National was, at this point, I didn't think I was going to get a contract with the Royal Ballet. I'd worked with them a bit, but I didn't, you know, there was so many talented girls in my class. I didn't think, oh, you know, it was my dream, but I couldn't rely on it. No. So I thought, okay, actually, I'm going to focus on something else and I'm going to really try to make that happen so that I'm not so heartbroken when I don't get the Royal Ballet. So Dutch National as a company, it was one of the first companies that kind of did these little class excerpts and rehearsal excerpts on YouTube.
Okay.
So they had like a really cool platform, which I had researched and had been following for a while. And kind of, you know, as you join the school and you start talking about companies, I knew that they were a taller company, that they still did a lot of classical ballet, but they had some really amazing choreographers that came in. So it seemed like a good mix of everything and still of such a high caliber. And I love the idea of living in Amsterdam. It seemed like a very cozy city compared to London. And, you know, it just felt, I didn't, you know, I'd never been and I didn't know the company, but saying, yeah, I'd really like to go to Dutch. It felt right.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, this is it. This is going to be my audition. And we went with a group of friends. We took, you know, like the cheapest flight possible, arrived at 1 a.m, stayed in probably the worst hotel. But like, it was so exciting. Next day we went to the audition and I was so like, okay, it has to happen. Yeah, you know, they need to see me, they need to know. And I remember standing at the bar and they weren't looking at me. And I was like, they need to, you know, like they need to see me. Yeah. And I remember in Grand Bat Maz, I made eye contact with the director and was kind of like, hi. I don't know. I did something that I felt like I grabbed his attention. And from that, I was very confident in the center work and I felt like, okay, I did my best possible. And they send everyone away, they discuss. And then when they came back to call out the numbers, they called mine. So I felt, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I felt like, okay, that's good. And they offered me a spot in the junior company. And we'd been told not to accept anything, to say thank you very much. I will think about it. And I was so overexcited. I said, yes, I want to move here. I will, I can start tomorrow. Like the excitement was exploding. It was like you work for so long and then you finally get...
You want to hear, yeah.
And you get that and you just, yes. So that was super exciting. And then I took an overnight train to Munich, arrived at like 5 a.m, and we did such a long audition there. And I remember at that point, I was like, oh, look, I already got Dutch National. I can't, I was doing the class and I got to the end, which was amazing, but I was so exhausted, It was just such a weekend. And I ended up getting the junior company there as well. And it was, I don't know, it was crazy. We flew back to London and the next day I had a meeting with Jay Jolly, and he let me know that I had also received a contract from ENB. So at this point I had 3 contracts and I was, that was super exciting.
Of course.
But I was so set on Dutch National. I was like, it was my dream. I thought, okay, that's great. And then 2 days after that, I was called back into the office and Jay Jolly told me that I had a contract with the Royal Ballet. And by that point, I had been so set on Dutch. I think I'd also emailed them immediately when I landed in London just to say, thank you, I'm so excited. So I was so tunnel vision to going there. And then my other dream was possible. And it was again a moment of, what am I going to do? It was really bizarre. And of course, then, it was a full contract with the Royal Ballet. It wasn't a junior company or an apprenticeship. And so I think if I had been offered that straight away, I would have accepted it without thinking. But because Dutch had come first and it was that first excitement, it was hard to kind of see, choose where I should go. But then talking to Gayleen and my parents and so on, I decided it's the Royal Ballet. And when I did kind of come to that decision, it was like the biggest weight in the world had been lifted off my shoulders.
Sure.
It felt
right.
It felt so good.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Did you actually have to go and audition?
I did. Similarly, I only had to do, well, okay, let me just start from the beginning. So you start with the photo shoot and talking to Jay Jolly, anyway, in my case, about your options and what you think you'd be suited to as a dancer. You know, different companies have different sort of repertoire. So I also similarly like classical, but also contemporary. I wanted to go to a versatile company, not something that focused on one or the other so heavily. So I auditioned for Stuttgart privately. I flew over and I stayed with a dancer who had it was his first year in the company, and he kindly offered me to stay with him. And I was offered an apprenticeship, and I thought, okay, well, it's a great company. Maybe I could live in Germany. I loved the company. I really loved the rep and the dancers. It just seemed like a very cool place. But I didn't accept anything like the teachers say. Just keep your options open, you know. So I flew back to London, and I had a couple more lined up. I went to Norway, and I did a small open audition, and didn't hear anything for a while. And then it hit that really busy audition season where there's multiple auditions overlapping all throughout Europe at the same time, and you kind of have to, well, wherever you've applied, to prioritize where you think you would be best suited to. So I had a weekend where, same as you, Saturday was Dutch National, and Sunday was Berlin. And I booked, you know, there's like the one or two expensive overnight flights, kind of like, you know, sorting it all out, accommodation. It was getting ready for that weekend. So it was a big build up, and on the Thursday before that weekend, called into the office, like, you know, a couple of us were, and it was offered an apprenticeship with the Royal Ballet. And my year was the first year, maybe second year, where they started the Ord Jebsen apprenticeship program, which it allowed a greater intake into the company, whereas usually before, so when you were offered, they'd take in maximum 2 to 3 dancers, and it, you know, there's only so many dancers that can be in a company, and the turnover, some years there's more, sometimes there's less. And our year, they needed more dancers, and it was a way of bringing more of us in. So 3 boys and 4 girls, actually. So very excited. I was like, okay, I've got the Royal Ballet, like, tick, that's great. And what do I do about this weekend? You know, like, and having to discuss that with Jay Jolly, and he said, well, it's up to you, but you don't want to be sending the wrong messages. And I said, well, I've booked all these flights and hotels and everything. And he said, well, I'm going to leave it up to you. So I may have done something a little bit cheeky, but I pretty much went on a weekend holiday. I decided I wanted the Royal Ballet, and I went to Amsterdam and Berlin, and I just had a weekend away. Because I didn't want to ruin my chances, and they said, you know, you don't want to send the wrong message, and I didn't. And now realizing it, I probably could have done both of the auditions and just seen what had happened. You know, had more options, and but I really wanted the Royal Ballet. You know, that was all it came down to.
It's the goal.
And you know, we'd already been working with the company. I had an idea of how it would work. It would be very easy to live in London. And have the same friends, and there were lots of things, you know, that pointed towards London and the Royal Ballet. So. I in hindsight, I do think the auditions would have been great just for more experience, more exposure, maybe getting a better idea of living in another country and what it would be like to dance in another company. But I'm very happy that we stayed at the Royal Ballet.
So the first year in the company is a big change from the last year at school, because you go from the top dog to the very, very bottom. And you also go from having teachers looking after you all the time to no one, that you're looking after yourself. So there's a huge adjustment period of trying to figure out who you are as a dancer and how you actually work on your own. And also how, you know, you start needing to figure out what you want to be as a dancer. It's not just the technical side, it's what you can bring as an artist, or, you know, when you're acting on the side of the stage, how you're going to be noticed, how you want to really integrate yourself into this community of artists. So for me, it was a really, you know, again, I thought, okay, I've made it to the Royal Ballet, this is it. And that was actually where the real work started.
Yeah, it's a completely new beginning, isn't it? And kind of, quite difficult to navigate, because you want to work as a quarter ballet member professionally and integrate, but you also want to be noticed, right? So it's a fine line as a professional dancer of doing your job correctly and also progressing up that ladder that we're working so hard kind of become soloists and be able to have more roles and the opportunity to express yourself as an artist. It's a fine line.
It's hard as well, I think, because at school everybody, there are obviously more talented people and less talented people and so on, but everyone kind of progresses at the same rate because, there's only one show at the end of the year. So if you have a good part or a less good part, it doesn't feel like there's such a big gap. But then when you're in the company, you realize that everyone goes at different speeds. Someone that you joined with or who just joined above you might already be doing a soloist role. Yeah. And you're doing the corps de ballet work. And that's hard to understand initially because you want to have the same opportunities as everyone else. And really, there is a hierarchy in the company. And there are, stepping stones that you have to take, before you get a slightly featured role. I had done the Giselle variation at school for solos evening and was like, surely I'll be Giselle. I remember going and looking at the casting and I was like, oh yeah, okay, second cast peasants. And, it was that kind of,
the hunt walking on.
Yeah, you had to readjust your expectations because from school you really do feel like the principal dancers of the Royal Ballet School. So then to go down to the corps de ballet, you just need that moment of reshuffling. And once you get there, it might take a few months, but then you start to really understand how it starts to work.
Yeah, you find your own.
Yeah, I'd say 6 months maybe it takes.
Maybe. It's individual, isn't it?
To get there.
But like you say, with the school, you're being nurtured constantly. There's a teacher watching you and focusing on you. And then you join the company and you're given class openly. There's different teachers, guest teachers.
Yeah.
And it's really put on you how you want to progress and what you want to focus on as a dancer. And some people lose technique, but they gain an artistry, and there's a whole sort of shift in how you approach your dance.
Yeah.
So
I guess after you realize that you are there, you are in the company, you pass your probation, you're officially part of the company. Yeah, and you kind of start to relax and realize what is happening around you. You're doing some of the best ballets in the best costumes with beautiful music in one of the most beautiful opera houses. And you kind of have to pinch yourself because you realize, wow, I made it here and this is really good. We were looked after, we had amazing health care, we just had everything. We were incredibly lucky. And I think, no matter how long we stay there, every time we do Meyerling or every time we do Manon, like you said, these really integral ballets to the Royal Ballet,
heritage, yeah.
It's just so special.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, it's really amazing. But again, I guess beyond that, one of the most amazing things that the Royal Ballet does are its tours. Oh. At the end of every season, we get to go places that I don't think I would have visited unless I had, the opera house to take me. And my first season, it was actually one of my favorite tours. We did Moscow, Taipei, and Shanghai. So I'd never been to Asia, and I'd never been to Russia. It was all very exciting. And going to Moscow was a very surreal experience because, what was it, 4 years before that, before the Royal Ballet School, before joining and doing a year at the company, I had, decided that I was going to go to the school in Moscow. So visiting Moscow and seeing the city and seeing, where I might have been, it was this alternate reality that could have happened, was really quite weird. And I think when I was there, I made a mental decision that I was really happy that I had stayed in London. I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't get that warm, magical feeling that London had given me. It seemed quite harsh. And, just the architecture there is so, it's quite bare. For me, it wasn't a welcoming city. Okay. The Opera House was, and I think it is the most amazing place I've ever danced. It just is so grand. Yeah. Like you step onto that stage and you realize you're in one of the most historical stages. But yeah, I don't know. It was nice to see and to kind of be there and acknowledge that this could have been me, but I was very happy that I was coming as the person that I was, having lived in London, and it felt like I made the right decision actually. Up until this point, I'm happy with who I am. I'm glad I didn't come here. So that was really cool. It kind of completed a circle, at least, in my mind. I felt like reassured that I had made a good choice.
Yeah, sure. My second season in the company, we had the opportunity to travel to Australia for our international tour, and how exciting is that? It's the furthest away you can get from the UK, and I think the company, there was an underlying kind of excitement because it's such a long journey, so to be paid to go and perform in such a faraway place, and it sort of has this kind of paradise idea, people have that in the back of their mind, and I was just excited to be able to show our company members and colleagues my home, because it is a beautiful place to be, and also to have my family and friends be able to, well, I'm from Sydney, so everyone flew up to Brisbane, and we performed at QPAC, and we were doing Wayne McGregor's Wolfworks and Christopher Wilden's Winter's Tale. Yeah. Both great ballets, I think.
Really good.
Sort of like capture the audience in a certain way, and yeah, just what a wonderful experience to be in Brisbane and have family watching me finally as a professional dancer. It's hard to have people fly over to London unless it's for something featured, so a short flight, a domestic flight to come up and make an occasion of it, I think. And also, in Australia there is an art scene, there of course there is, but sport always dominates, kind of. I mean, there's a huge art world in the UK as well, but less so in Australia. And I think when the Royal Ballet had decided to come to Australia, the promotion started 6 months in advance. There was this hype around it, and people were flying from Sydney, Melbourne,
all over
Australia, like really making that sort of congregation to watch like a world-class company. And I think the Bolshoi had also flown to Brisbane, so at that stage it was an exciting time to have these internationally acclaimed ballet companies coming over to Australia and performing. So it was.
Yeah, it must have been really cool to be home. I can't imagine going to Colorado with the Royal Ballet. I think I would be, I'd be so giddy.
It was almost home for me. The dream was, and still is, Sydney Opera House on that harbour, that beautiful, the sails, Johan Utsen's design, it's iconic, and to have everyone at that stage would be like a dream come true for me. But Brisbane
maybe
was
someday.
The next best option. Maybe. Who knows? We'll see.
So now that we've been in the company for quite a while, 7 and 5 years respectively, it's crazy. Time has absolutely flown.
It flies,
Everyone that works there has become family, from the people in the canteen to, the people that let us into the stage door to the stage crew. It is our home away from home. And I don't know, I feel really, really comfortable there now. The performances have become so fun. It's always less and less stressful to go on stage, and more of just an opportunity to be all together. And
we spend more time at the Opera House than in our home.
Yes. So, for me as well, getting promoted at the end of last season was just another big dream come true. And this season I was getting, little opportunities. I got to do my first solo, which was so exciting. And, just seeing kind of, as a corps de ballet, you always have ups and downs, but when things start going a bit more up, you start feeling like you're starting to climb again.
You can feel the momentum gain. Yeah.
So the momentum for me was really gaining this season, and I was feeling more and more confident as a dancer, and just really excited, kind of shedding that fear of, what do people think? Am I doing a good job? Just thinking, I'm going to enjoy this. I love the people around me. I love this stage. Let's really make the most of our time. And I think you were getting there as well.
I was on the same track as you, and I was preparing myself for my first big solo feature in the Dante project. So Wayne McGregor's new 3-act ballet, and I was the second cast in a feature role. And then we all hit a roadblock. So COVID-19 struck, and
literally from Friday, we finished the Swan Lake show. There was a long weekend, and Monday the Opera House was closed.
And the future of the Royal Opera House, and we were performing Swan Lake. We just started a full run of that. We had completed
Only
5 shows.
5 shows. But also, I think when the Opera House closed, we thought, okay, it's going to be about 3 weeks.
Temporary.
Then we'll get back in. We'll probably start, we were already deciding which program we thought we were going to start with, and like kind of guessing what was going to happen. And God, how that all changed. I think it took us maybe 2 weeks to realize, okay, this is the new reality. Slowly, like, things are setting in. We're not actually going back to work. Okay, we're going to be doing class in our kitchen. Performances, the season is probably done. It was such a weird feeling, and very slow. I think we both knew deep down that the season was over.
You didn't want to admit it to yourself, though. Yeah.
You just don't want to think the worst case scenario. You don't want to think about the opportunities you're missing. No. You suddenly just go, okay, day by day. And
dancers are always looking for the next opportunity, the next production, and to be told that suddenly we're not even sure when we're going to be starting again and what you'll be dancing in.
It's terrifying. We'd done 5 shows at Swan Lake. To work up to Swan Lake, especially as a girl, you are at your absolute fittest because it is such a marathon ballet. And we were just really getting into it, having done all those rehearsals. You get the first few shows out of the way, you're starting to get comfortable, looking forward to 20 more shows where you just feel like a superhero, like you've accomplished something. And then to stop so abruptly and to feel, it's so strange because, usually when you stop so abruptly, it's for an injury. But we were fit, we were ready, we could have done, we were all in our best shape. And so it was so weird to be sitting here at home, ready to do anything, but not able to.
And I think that's why we ended up, the two of us ended up channeling that sort of pent-up energy into running, yoga,
everything.
Any sort of form of physical exercise where we would exert ourselves and feel puffed and out of breath.
I actually don't think I've ever been so tired. The days we would wake up at roughly the same time as class, 10:30, and we would just exercise until 4:35. And, whatever it was, doing little gym workouts.
We'd do Pilates, we would do yoga, we'd go out for a long run, we'd do class.
Everything. And it got to the point where I think we both realized, actually, hold on, we can't sustain this. We need to accept this new situation for what it is and realize that right now, we can't prioritize that physical exhaustion that we love to get from dancing. We have to kind of step back a little bit, keep doing, something physical, but we need to readapt to the situation.
Well, it felt like we were almost trying to maintain our peak performance sort of shape as a ballet dancer, but it's very hard when you're not doing ballet to keep that shape. We were, trying in our little kitchen to do the Zoom classes, keep class going, on a concrete floor, trying to jump with like a small yoga mat.
The fact that we haven't broken anything is amazing.
Of our body and the house. I mean, come on. Some wild legs hitting the cupboard and the chair.
So that was, a big learning curve for the rest of the world as well. And I think what has helped us is being in, we're so privileged to be in our own space. We have a garden, we are healthy, our families are all healthy. We've been very, very fortunate in this kind of dark time. We have been incredibly lucky. So when we've had bad days, when you're really missing work or you're missing your friends or whatever, we've both missed home. You just have to hold on to that and say, actually, where I'm at is really, really good. You
just have to put things into perspective, right?
And we've also, I think that first part was so focused on trying to exert ourselves physically and get all that energy out. And then when we kind of let that go, our next phase was, okay, why don't we explore who we are when we're not dancers?
because it takes up so much of our time that we don't often have time to explore our other interests.
Yeah.
Ballet takes over, and that's a great thing. It's great to be so focused, but to be given suddenly this opportunity to see what we like, to other things to pursue, I guess. So.
Yeah, and it was, I think, for me, probably the last 3 months. So the first month was quite hard, but the last 3 months have been incredibly eye-opening to who I am. I feel like I've rediscovered many things about myself and learned many things about myself. You know, doing an online class and sticking to a more academic schedule during the day was, you know, sitting at a desk and trying to study, I found very difficult. Again, you know, hadn't done that in years. And it also made me realize how passionate I am about moving and about expressing myself artistically. So, you know, it was nice to kind of have that time away from work to realize how important work is, and to also realize, you know, after ballet, what am I going to do? Like, where am I going to fit into society? And to really take everything into account and just calmly kind of not decide, but just start feeling where you want to be.
Yeah. After all this time, you know, away from the Royal Opera House and exploring other avenues and realizing that we're not going to be dancing for a while, we really missed it, right? Like, it was sort of, we wanted a project to sort of kind of involve ourselves again and express artistically. So one of our colleagues, Chisato Katsura, had started this project called DistDancing. The idea behind it being offering free open air performances. People in London particularly are craving some sort of art to watch and be immersed in. And the idea behind it is she has a sort of theatre space, an open venue where there are multiple stages and we can perform on them socially distanced, so we're abiding by current regulations. And we contacted her, and she said she's looking for a diverse range of artists to perform, to create a kind of a show of all manner of what do you call it, sort of
repertoire.
Yeah, repertoire, I guess. So contemporary dancers, classical dancers, different circus performers, and anything and beyond. And suddenly we have this opportunity put in front of us where and also the repertoire that she was wanting, we were able to choose. So suddenly, from going as a quarter ballet member of the Royal Ballet, you're given that opportunity to either choreograph or decide what you'd like to dance and be the feature. It's quite an exciting, you know, we've had time away, so can't wait to perform. And I decided to choreograph on myself. It's a first. Never choreographed. Never had I've had the opportunity. Just being too scared to actually, decide how I want to present myself and choose my own soundtrack and, I mean, costume as well. And yeah, suddenly such an experience is sort of given to us, and
with limited time, we've kind of got thrown into it, and I think that was good. We had a week to prepare.
Time to actually kind of
overthink.
Exactly.
We just had to go for it and dive.
So we were given a space, a beautiful yoga studio, again distanced, and going from dancing in our kitchen for the past 3.5-4 months to suddenly this beautiful high ceiling, huge open windows, having some loud music playing, also being around other dancers other than ourselves. It suddenly, I think the first rehearsal day we felt a little bit sort of shaky. There was this like built up adrenaline, but suddenly we had this opportunity to dance and to create and move again in a sort of organic way. And you decided to perform the Dying Swan, so...
Yeah, I'm not a choreographer by any means, and I don't think I ever want to be, but I am so happy that you are. But for me, it was really nice to be given, I was given the opportunity to do whatever I wanted, but Chi suggested Dying Swan, and it just seemed like such a wonderful solo that was so expressive artistically without being too technical, which is great because right now, we have maintained shape, but I wouldn't say we're, in
No,
full
not in peak
100%
condition.
condition. So it was good to have this solo that I could, I could learn. The music was so beautiful, and I just felt, I don't know, I felt like me again. It felt so nice to kind of just really think about every part, how my hands were moving, how my head was tilted, those little idiosyncrasies that you don't pay attention to day anymore because we don't have to. So being back in that space with dancers, in each corner doing their own thing and being able to really, feel like yourself again was amazing. And transferring that, so we had, usually when we prepare for a performance, we have weeks and lots of rehearsals and putting things together, and this was just so short and very homemade, right? You're rehearsing yourself, you kind of film yourself and watch and see what you could do better, but we didn't have mirrors or things. So it was quite an exciting week, a little bit stressful again, feeling that adrenaline that had been gone for so long.
The time crunch, yeah.
The Dying Swan, as beautiful as it is all on point. It's all bourrées, and having not worn pointe shoes for 4 months, or putting them on for maybe 20 minutes every other day.
But an extended period.
Yeah, to suddenly do a 3-minute solo on your toes, I felt that. It was quite sore. But, again, it was a welcome pain because it felt like we're getting back
to normality.
We're going back into a show, so I want to be feeling this. And so, you kind of get all these little obstacles and you recognize them because they're all the same things that we feel when we go to the opera house, just on a smaller scale. And getting
it
to
was those small feelings of preparing yourself, and every dancer has a way of preparing for a performance, and it was that sort of initial kind of,
even thinking I have to go to bed early tonight because tomorrow we have a show. Those little things made, I don't know, it felt like the build up again. It was really exciting. Being back on stage, walking on and knowing that people are watching you, hearing your music, it was very surreal yet very welcome. And as the first show kind of happened, as it was finishing and I finished on the ground, it felt like, again, we've made it back. It has been so hard not to dance. It has been so hard not to feel like you're showing someone what you do. This is, we make people feel something, and in return we also get that feeling that it's such a special thing, ballet and performing arts, whatever it is. And we got that back.
The
that
audience
weekend.
had missed it. You could feel that appreciation, and coming up to us afterwards and saying, you have no idea how much we've been wanting this, and thank you, really thank you for what you've given. And we have that internally as well. It felt such a satisfying kind of release, to finally dance again and on a stage and be that,
it was a mutual appreciation between audience and performer, where you've both been starved of each other and then you re-meet, and it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're both there. One's watching, one is giving, and it creates such an amazing atmosphere. And that's why art is going to survive this. That's why ballet will always thrive, because of that special connection, which no one can put a name to, but that when it's taken away, it's missed so desperately by all of us, not just the performers.
That live energy in a theater, that's the orchestra, the music, the dancers and the audience, and it all comes together as one, and it's something that will always adapt to the situation. And we're gonna see how it comes out of this COVID, but
it will survive.
It will.
But it's been nice to kind of see the beginning of its rebirth in this new time, to be part of this DistDancing, and just to kind of maybe forge the path for what these new performances will be. And hopefully they will just keep developing, and who knows what the future will bring, but there will be art, there will be ballet. It will continue.